Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our California Rice Virtual Field Day. We thank everyone very much for attending. This is our first virtual field day. As you all know, this is usually held outside at the Rice Experiment Station, so we're trying something a little bit new this year. So we have several speakers. We're starting in about 5 minutes here with our official talks, and we'll have talks about every 15 minutes. In between the talks, we may or may not have time for questions, so please put them into the chat, as Rachel said earlier. We'll go ahead and have a question and answer session at the very end for the last 10 or so minutes of the talks today. So if you can, save your questions for that. As Rachel said before, we are offering DPR credits. So to get those credits, you need to attend the entire webinar. And then, as she said, there'll be knowledge check polls that'll pop up in between the presentations. And those are for practice. So please, we encourage you to do those polls. And then at the end of the event, there'll be a short quiz that you'll need to pass with a score of 70% or better. And you will also get that exam emailed to you within 24 hours of the webinar. You'll have to complete it within 7 days of receiving it. The CCA credits as well are offered for this course, and there'll be a little QR code at the end. You can just scan that, or you can email the program support unit afterwards. Real quickly before we get started, I just wanted to take a moment to recognize Dr. Kent McKenzie. Dr. Kent McKenzie is going to be retiring this year. After very many years of service at the Rice Experiment Station and to the rice growers of California. He was a rice breeder at the California Experiment Station since 1988 and the director of the Rice Experiment Station since 2000. Again, he'll be retiring this year, and although we wish we could be there at the Experiment Station in person, we hope next year we'll be able to be there again. So thank you, Kent. And then just real quickly before we get started, I just want to recognize everyone that's helped make this possible today. So the UCNR Program Support Unit, the California Rice Experiment Station directors and staff, and then the California Rice Research Board and the California Rice Commission, of course, for providing much of the funding. We have industry partners and collaborators that all of us have worked with. And then, of course, our staff and students, and then biggest and most important, the California rice growers themselves. So thank you, everyone. Okay, Bruce, if you want to go ahead and start getting your PowerPoint loaded here. So our next speaker is Dr. Bruce Lindquist. He's a cooperative extension rice specialist at UC Davis in the Department of Plant Sciences. He's going to be speaking to us today about fertility and planting date trials. Go ahead, Bruce.
Hello, everyone. Just a sec here while I get this right. I just want to thank you guys for joining us this afternoon. It's a bit unusual, as Russell was just saying, to do this. However, one thing that it does enable us to do is show a little bit more of what we are doing. We can show some pictures of what's been going on in the season. So it is better in that way. So just try to figure out how to move my screen here. Very sensitive. Okay, so what I'm going to be giving is some of the research updates that we've been working on this year. Certainly not everything, but show some items where there might be something of interest early on. I'm going to talk a little bit about the weather we're having and the smoke. I want to bring up the yield contest, and then hopefully if there's time for questions, we'll be able to discuss those. Having a hard, okay. One of the things that we are looking at is, as Russell was just talking about lodging, M105 is a really nice variety. It's a little earlier than M206, slightly higher yield potential, but it's been susceptible to lodging, which sort of defeats the purpose in some ways. People want to get it harvested quickly, but if it's lodged, it slows down harvest operations and may impact grain quality. So some growers are actually moving away from M105, and we wanted to do a study this year where we're quantifying the lodging in M105 and to see if there's any way to maybe mitigate against lodging by manipulating nitrogen application. So we've applied some very high N rates from 120 to 210 pounds pre-plant. And then we have with and without top dress N to see how that may affect lodging as well as yields. Obviously, there's nothing to see yet. You can see the picture in the background there. But one thing we did notice early on, and that might be of interest to some of you, is that we use Serrano in this trial for early season herbicide management. You can clearly see here that M206 is quite a bit more bleached than M105. And you can see that pattern throughout this checkerboard where you got M206 and M105. See a big difference there in the two. Talking with others, Kent, Kasim, they both have sort of seen this before. So if you're using Serrano and M206, it might be something that you're interested in and just kind of keep an eye on. Another thing that we're looking at is one of my students, Carla, is looking at different granular nitrogen sources when we can't use aqua. This year we couldn't, at least for a part of the season, aqua was very limited due to COVID. There was about 10 days where aqua was in very short supply. In previous years, we've had issues with a lot of rain, forcing growers to just flood their fields before they can apply nitrogen. So it's a very relevant question and something we've started to look at. So we have a lot of different treatments. We have ammonium sulfate and urea applied before flooding. We have both of those fertilizers and enhanced efficiency fertilizers applied the same day as planting, so the field is flooded. And we just are applying it when we apply the seed. And then the same group of fertilizers applied 2 weeks after planting. Again, this is the full dose, 2 weeks after planting. And then ammonium sulfate and urea applied 2, 4, 6, and 8 weeks after planting at the ratio shown here at 20, 30, 30, 20%. So most of it coming in the 4 to 6 week range. We're using Super U, Anvol, and coated urea from Agricoat as our enhanced efficiency fertilizers. These slow down the release of fertilizers. So technically you'd be able to apply a lot of it and then it's released slowly. And as it's released, it's being able to be taken up. Part of the problem of applying it all at once is you've got a lot of nitrogen sitting there that's very susceptible to losses, and it would be taken up very inefficiently. So again, we're still early in the season, but Carla's been taking NDVI measurements fairly regularly every week. I took some of her data just from August 6th, which is kind of in that mid to late boot period, and looked at what we're seeing so far. So we have the 0 N here. This is the NDVI off to the left, 0 nitrogen here. And then this grouping is applied before flooding. We have applied right after flooding here, applied 2 weeks after flooding, and then our split applications are here on the far right. And what you can see is that if you can apply it all before flooding, you're getting your highest NDVI. And we've looked at this before with aqua, and typically urea and aqua are very similar in their behavior and use efficiency. So this would be comparable to aqua at the same rate. We're seeing ammonium sulfate at the same rate, giving fairly high NDVI values. If you move across the split applications, again, you're applying it 4 times in this case, we're able to get very similar NDVI values, similar uptake efficiencies, but it's 4 passes across a field. That can get expensive if you're doing it by airplane. So the other options we were looking at is applying it right after flooding, and you can see that tends to be the worst. And then applying it 2 weeks after flooding, which is better than applying it right after flooding, but certainly not as good as some of the others, at least in terms of the early season NDVI values. What we'd hope to see is that some of these enhanced efficiency fertilizers, the Super U Anvol or the AgriCoat, to be a lot better, but they're really, Anvol in this early one seems to be doing a little bit better, but when you go into the 2 weeks after, there's really not a lot of difference between some of these enhanced efficiency fertilizers, which are quite expensive, compared to just applying it all at once. Now, I'd just like to caution that we're looking at NDVI, you know, kind of halfway through the season. We might see very different results at the end. And so hopefully during the winter grower meetings, we can provide you a little bit of an update on that. Another thing that we're looking at that we have been tried to do in the past is looking at just different timing of planting for various varieties. We had hoped to have a mid-May planting date, but we had a lot of rain then, which prevented that date. But we have May 29th, June 12th, and June 26th planting dates out here at the RES. We're looking at M206, M105. Russell just mentioned this new variety, M211, M210, and M209. You can see in this picture taken on August 18th that the flowering heading has occurred in all the varieties except M209 and M211. This week, the June 12th one, we're just starting to see some heading there, and certainly nothing yet in the June 26th. Again, last year, a June 12th planting date was not so uncommon. So that's, some growers are doing that. You really like to be planting in May. So anyways, we're going to be, again, sharing some of this data when we get a little closer to plant, or when we get into the winter grower meetings. So I'd just like to touch base a little bit on some of the temperatures and the smoke that we're seeing. I mean, there's a lot of concern about that, how that might affect rice growth and yields. So I've kind of looked at some of the data, compared it to previous years. And so the first thing that we found in previous studies is you can get sterility in rice when you're getting temperatures above 104 during flowering. Off on this picture on the right, you can see rice at flowering stage. You can see the anthers there. So if you're getting these very high temperatures during that period, it can be a problem. I looked at the 3 CIMA stations that I use, and I'll be showing data from these 3, Davis, Durham, and Williams. So kind of blanketing the larger valley area. And we had anywhere from 2 to 5 days with 100+ temperatures from these stations, and 1 to 2 days where temperatures were above 104. Now those ones that were above 104 were record temperatures, usually around 108, 109. So very high temperatures, but it was only for a couple of days. Certainly, I think the smoke that was very prevalent probably lowered the temperatures, may have been a benefit for those fields where rice was flowering during that really high temperature time. Most of the rice was planted in mid-May, by mid-May this year. And in most cases, rice was past flowering by mid-August when we started to really experience those high temperatures. The other question you might have is, well, what about warm temperatures during grain filling? We've done some analysis on that in previous work, and we've seen no relationship between warmer temperatures during grain fill and yield. It didn't seem to have much of an impact. That said, there could be some issues related to grain quality or disease that might show up. So I just wanted to look in this next slide at these temperatures, looking at historical data. Here we have from 1983 to 2019. This is average August temperatures. I show the high and the low during that time period. And then this is in the middle here, we have the mean of the 3 CIMA stations shown here, with Davis, Williams, and Durham showing the individual ones. And what you can see is historically, an average temperatures of around 95 have been on the high end of temperatures. We're seeing that in this year, and this is through yesterday, so it's as current as I can get it, that the average temperature so far for August is 93.5. So we've seen warmer temperatures historically than this. What's interesting, what is higher is the nighttime temperatures are high. Historically, we've had very few Augusts where temperatures have been above 60. This year so far, we're averaging about 62. So quite a bit higher. And so we're probably getting higher nighttime respiration in the plant, which could potentially translate into lower yields. But it also may affect disease. And I'm not sure, Luis may get into that, I'm not sure. Wanted to bring up the smoke as well. 2018, we had some really serious wildfires, particularly up in Redding. And what we saw in that is on these different graphs, Williams, Biggs, and Verona, these are CIMA stations. You can see that there's a real dip in solar radiation. That dip was much greater, closer to the fires. And as you moved away from the fires, like down in Verona, down here near the Sacramento airport, there was still a bit of a dip, but it was much less. In 2018, we did see lower yields. Up in this northwest area, we saw lower yields in the yield contest, and talking to some of the people at the dryers, they were seeing lower yields there. Yields in the rest of the state and the valley were not that impacted, and we saw some pretty good yields. We compare that to this year from 2018. So 2018, the fires started, or the smoke anyways, was serious for about a 3-week period, July 25th to August 15th. This year, the fires actually started on the 15th, and August 16th is when we started to see a real drop in solar radiation. And so we've been about 11 days so far. If you just look at this graph here on the bottom, again, it's the 3 stations that I was talking about. And you can see the solid line across here is data from a normal year, solar radiation. It declines during August because of shortening day length. But if you compare what we're seeing here in this cloud below that, that's due to smoke. We saw some real reductions early on around in August 16th. But overall, there's been a drop of about 30% in solar radiation during the days since the fire started. We've had this really poor air quality. And again, can't say how much that's going to impact yields, but it certainly could, and it may affect other things as well. Certainly, I think that the smoke reduced some of the high temperatures and may have been a benefit in some ways early on. Just want to wrap up with the yield contest. We're going to want to highlight the 2019 winners. We had Greg Driver, Jack Shepard, and Gary Enos getting from anywhere from around 114 to 119 sacks last year. Greg Driver was the lucky one. He won the Gator. He won the drawing for that. And we just want to thank our sponsors there listed below that provided funding for that Gator. We are planning to run the yield contest again. We've sent out some invitations. Usually on a field day is when we get 90 to 95% of our contestants. We're really low on people that have entered, and we wouldn't be able to really run it with the current amount that we have. So if you're interested, or you're a PCA and you have growers that have some really good looking fields out there, we'd really encourage you to enter the contest. You can enter it by up to this coming Friday, August 28th. We've tried to make it easier. All you need to do is let me know that you're entering. You just need to send me your name, your email, and your phone number to either my email, or you can text me there that you're going to enter, and we can take it up from there. Further details of the contest can be at our website, which is shown down here below if you're not very familiar with that. I don't have time to go into the details of that. With that, I'd like to thank those that are providing funding. Just about everything we've shown you today is funding from you guys through the California Rice Research Board. We really thank you for that. For UC Davis, particularly the Department of Plant Sciences. I've got a great crew of students and technicians that without them wouldn't be able to do any of that. So thank you very much. And I'm not sure if there's any time for questions.
I think there's time for maybe one question, if anyone has one, but so far we don't have anything in the chat. Any questions?